So he tried, and Prabhupada was very pleased with this design. You see, there's no shikars. He just had that one little thing on in the front there. That's all. So then, this is Mangal Artik at Krishna Balaram Temple. This is our temporary altar here. Right here in Prabhupada's house. If you go into Prabhupada's house and you see Prabhupada is standing in one murti form there in his bedroom, that was our temple room. And it was just half the size. They set up a temporary altar. We would do all of our offerings and worship there. And there is the brahmachari ashram and kitchen. There were 4 mud huts that the brahmacharis lived in, and that was the devoted kitchen there, completely open. And we had our own favorite dogs who used to come that would be fed. And we'll hear more about the kitchen later. Oh, that's Srimad Bhagavatam class, by the way. You'll see Guru Das, he's giving class. He was the temple president. Now, sometimes whenever Prabhupada did come, 1972, just over here, you know, there's the Agrasen Dharmshala, and there's our Kirtan Ashram, and behind that now there's something called the Bhakti Yoga Ashram. So before, that whole square belonged to one very influential ex-MP. His name was Seth Bishanchan. And he lived there. None of those things were there. It was just his house. He was a great devotee of Lord Shiva. But he dearly loved Prabhupada, another great devotee of Srila Prabhupada. There were just some people who loved Prabhupada so much they would do anything possible to help him. So when Prabhupada first got the land and there was nowhere for him to stay, sometimes he would stay at Seth Bishanchan's house. It was just, 5 minutes away. But as soon as these huts were built, and these huts are right here, right where the new bathroom palace is, and the accounts room, there's a wall there. So they were built on that wall there, because that was as far as our land went. As soon as the huts were built, Prabhupada moved into one of the huts. And he used to live there. He used to take bath with he would stand on a wooden plank, sit on a wood plank with a plastic bucket and a plastic load and take his bath. He wanted this place built, and he wanted to be right on site as soon as he could move in. This is our temple president, Guru Das. That's the husband of Jamuna Devi. In 1967, they wrote to Prabhupada. They were, of course, if you read Prabhupada Lilamrita, Jamuna met Prabhupada in 1966. Her sister was the first female disciple of Srila Prabhupada, Janaki, the wife of Mukunda Das. So she invited her sister for the wedding. The initiation was Janmashtami. The wedding was the next day. So that was when she met Prabhupada. And from there, she went to her home in Portland. She told her good friends, Sam and Melanie, that's Shamsundar and Malati, and Mukunda, Janaki, Jamuna, Shamsundar, none of them were initiated at the time, neither of them. They went to San Francisco, and they started the San Francisco Temple in 1967. So at that time they wrote to Prabhupada and they asked him, can we go to Vrindavan with you? Can we see Vrindavan, the real Vrindavan? And Prabhupada remembered that. So when he started his World Sankirtan party, he wrote to Guru Das, and he said, you come immediately. You wanted to make a temple in Vrindavan, you wanted to see Vrindavan, now you go there and you find a place for us to make a temple. So that was why he sent Guru Das in 1970. Before he brought any of the devotees, he sent Guru Das to find land, to live at the Radha Damodar temple, and that's how Jamuna and Guru Das first came here, to establish this temple. So when Prabhupada would come here, he would sometimes bring the few devotees who lived here to meet his godbrothers. Quite a few of his godbrothers had mutts here. For instance, Imli Tala, that was Bhakti Saranga Swami, and a few others. There was Ban Maharaj, I don't remember the names of the others. Prabhupada would go, and it would be the most amazing experience when we would visit these temples. Because here we were all young devotees in our 20s. And when we saw, because Prabhupada was in his 70s, his godbrothers were all in their 60s and 70s, we saw what Iskcon was going to be in 40 years, in 50 years. And we saw the love between the godbrothers, the godsisters, and how they interacted, how they played the mridanga, how they did the kirtan. We were just seeing the next generation, what we were going to be 40 years from then. It was a wonderful experience. It was just showing us that this is nothing new. This is going on generation after generation when we would visit all these places with Srila Prabhupada. Now this is the time we were discussing today, how Prabhupada was coming from Amritsar, and one man asked him to build a temple he was going to donate an ashram in Delhi. So the 5 devotees that got off of the train there, you see Gopal. Gopal still lives here. So these 5 devotees, they were so helpful, because in those days everything was rationed. India had it was a new nation, and everything had to get sanctioned from Delhi. So if we were going to build a temple, we had to get our sanctions for steel and for cement from the ministries in Delhi. So Guru Das, Giriraj, Tejas Prabhu was the temple president. He used to be a Peace Corps worker. His book is coming out now, or maybe it's already printed. He was a Peace Corps worker in Andhra Pradesh, so he knew Telugu. And a lot of the ministers come from South India. So he hit it off really good with the ministers. So he and Guru Das, what they would do was they would go to the minister's house at 7 o'clock in the morning when they were still in their pajamas. And they would talk to them then before they got to the office and get them to sign the sanctions. And Indira Gandhi, she fell in love with Jamuna Devi. She was just so in love with the devotees, but she was, of course, they were, secular. Now, Indira Gandhi, her guru lived here in Vrindavan. That was Anandamayi Ma. And she had an ashram here also. It's on Mathura Road. So she would also come to Vrindavan. So secretly, behind the scenes, she would also help the devotees. Even to the point where Prabhupada met her and made some, you can see here in Prabhupada's house, he has a little diary. He wrote down the things that he wanted to discuss with Indira Gandhi. That all the ministers had to have kirtan before their meetings, that there should be complete prohibition of meat eating and prostitution. There's quite a few points. So Indira Gandhi used to help the devotees get their visas, and the devotees would work on these sanctions in Delhi, and here they're presenting Indira Gandhi with Prabhupada's books, Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna book. Now, it was 1972. In March, the land was signed and sealed. Then Prabhupada decided in Kartik of that year, 1972, he wanted to bring the devotees back to Vrindavan, bigger than last time. So he wanted to have the Nectar Devotion series, as we've been hearing every morning. So quite a few devotees came, 1972. Lokanath Swami, that was when he got initiated. A lot of devotees got initiated at that time. And they couldn't all stay at Radha Damodar temple, so they stayed at the Lakshmi Rani Kunj. And Prabhupada had the devotees go every day in a big group, Sankirtan, to our land here. Prabhupada would come the Parikrama Marg walking from Radha Damodar. They would come from Keshigat. He would meet them here. Then they would walk back their different ways. They would meet in the morning in the courtyard by Rupa Goswami's Bhajan Kutir and Samadhi. And Prabhupada would give Srimad Bhagavatam class every morning for an hour from the first canto, chapter 2, Divinity and Divine Service. Yes. Then in the evening, for 2 hours, he gave his Nectar Devotion series. And he gave it in English, but still some of the Brijbasis, they would come and listen. And that was when he implored the locals here that, you see, the devotees are coming now from all over the world. You must welcome them. You must, when they come, they have to be welcomed by you. Please accept them. Because at that time, when was the Bangladesh war? It was 1971? 71, yes. So 1971, at that time, we had already a small place in Mayapur, and the Bangladeshi refugees were all coming. They were coming, but they were starving when they got to India. So the devotees got sanctioned because they were foreigners. They got sanctioned and they got rations from the US government to feed the Bangladeshi refugees. And the devotees all around the world were collecting donations. So this became very famous in India, that Iskcon was feeding the Bangladeshi refugees. But the government didn't like that, because it was as if Iskcon was outdoing the government. So Tejas found out that there was a secret plan amongst the government. They would start a rumor that actually this Iskcon is CIA. CIA means Central Investigation. Yeah, right, sorry. In other words, they had come to spy. Because America at that time was trying to develop Pakistan, and India was, this is all politics, but it had to do with our preaching, and it affected our preaching very much at that time. India was pro-Russian. So they wanted to make Iskcon look bad, so that Iskcon wouldn't look better than the government, which wasn't feeding, weren't feeding the Bangladeshi refugees. So that was what was going on at that time. Now, also at that time at that same time there was a war with Pakistan in 71. So there was a lockdown at that time, and Prabhupada and the devotees happened to be in Delhi during that war. Their lockdown was much worse than what we're experiencing now. They had to have a complete blackout every single night. No lights could be turned on. And Prabhupada and the devotees, they had to, in that little ashram that man had invited them to, they had to stay in that place through the duration of the war until it was over, and put newspapers on the windows, no lights, only a few candles, and they had to stay like that. So lockdown is nothing new. Even Prabhupada had to sit through the lockdown. So we're much more fortunate. All right, so Prabhupada's giving here his lectures at Radha Damodar Temple. And this is, again, the lectures. Just like when Prabhupada had his disciples come for the first time in 1971, and the municipality welcomed him, so the the welcome address was given this time by one of Prabhupada's distinguished godbrothers, Dr. O.B.L. Kapoor. I think his name was Adi Keshav Das. And he wrote a book, Saints of Raj. It's still available. Anyway, he also loved Prabhupada dearly. He used to write for our Back to Godhead magazine also. So here's Prabhupada giving the lectures. Then another, you'll see here, there's a devotee. That's Hayagriva. He was a professor in America. And he came here and he wrote a book called Vrindavan Days. If you ever have that book, he gives a very detailed description of that time with Srila Prabhupada here in Vrindavan. And he asked Prabhupada at that time, he said, Prabhupada, Vrindavan just looks so dirty and unkept and dilapidated. Why? This is supposed to be non-different from the spiritual world. And Prabhupada said, that's your eyes that see it that way. If Vrindavan is dirty and polluted, how is it that even the dogs, the hogs, everything gets liberated at the time of death? Vrindavan is most pure, but there's a covering Vrindavan. Yogamaya covers Vrindavan for the materialists like you. And she makes it appear to be dirty and polluted and uncared for, so the materialists won't want to stay here. So Prabhupada was opening up our eyes to see the real Vrindavan. In that days, actually Vrindavan was so pure. I remember the first time I came here, coming into the gate for the first time, it was all white sands here. That's why it was called Raman Reti. You won't find that anywhere now. White sands. And when you walked, because we would do the parikrama barefoot, of course, the parikrama was all this beautiful sand. When you walked, your feet would become white. Not like now, the feet become black. So that's how beautiful Vrindavan was. And he said, even the dust is Krishna. If you have a prayer, you want something, the dust, you just pray to the dust and the dust can fulfill your prayers. That's how pure Vrindavan is. So there are many conversations that Hayagriva had with Prabhupada at that time. And also he gives a lot of history of Braj and all the invasions and all the things that happened before the 6 Goswamis, after the 6 Goswamis. So here's Prabhupada walking to the temple here from the Radha Damodar temple. This is the Parikrama Marg. See, it's all dirt. This is Prabhupada requesting the locals, please welcome the devotees. Now, construction is underway. This is what our temple looked like. These are the bricks. No windows, no arches, just, you see there where the arches are going to be. Now, there's one mystery still working here. His name is Ramji Lal. There were a group of laborers. Now, the laborers in Vrindavan, they were primarily Muslim. So Prabhupada had a contractor, his name was Allah Bux. And Allah Bux had a son, his name was Moradi. And Moradi was in charge of the artisans. There were 10 artisans. Artisans means the specialized mysteries who could make, just like in our temple we have so many beautiful designs, the flowers, the chandelier on the ceiling, on the top there, all the designs on the flowers, on the railings, the elephants. All of that was designed by these top mysteries, the 10 mysteries. And then above them were 5 super special mysteries. And they designed all of these beautiful, beautiful, everything done by hand. There was no machinery here. They used to lay out, I would watch them, they would lay out these chutters of tin, and they would just draw on the chutters of tin, cut it out, and make the cement gully on top of that, and that was our temple. Everything done by hand. The only machine we had on the whole property was one cement mixer, because we had to mix the cement. And we had to have a little generator to keep that cement mixer going, because most of the time there was no electricity at all. So this is before all of the design work was done. You're just seeing the skeleton of our temple here. We'll show other pictures later. We couldn't put all the pictures in the book because a lot of them were, it was a long time ago. It was 40 years ago when we wrote the book. So in those days, the resolution was very low. So, and the pictures were very small. And the photographer was Guru Das. He was a professional photographer. And when he left in 1970, the only thing we could find of his, we found it here in Prabhupada's house, were his contact sheets. And contact sheets means you take the negative and you make each picture was this big, like 1 inch by ½ an inch. And that was all we had. So we could find very few pictures big enough to put in the book. Otherwise, once you blew them up, you couldn't understand what it was. So we have some of those pictures in our collections. We'll be able to see them in small form, but this was the only one that we could get big enough so that you could see before the construction, before it was complete. Now, Prabhupada had a godbrother. He was from Orissa. His name was Ananda Das Brahmachari. We used to call him Ananda Maharaj. He was just like a father for the devotees. He was so expert. He would climb up trees and make us grind. He would make little pills for us so we wouldn't get sick, and he would cook for us every day, and he would play tricks on us, and he would fill up our plates so that we would cry because we couldn't eat so much. He was so loving to the devotees, and he wouldn't feed the devotees that didn't work. He knew everyone in the line. He would skip over the devotees who didn't do service. And the devotees would get angry. He said, Guru Das, why isn't he giving me any prasadam? And Guru Das would tell them, because you're lazy. So he knew everything about everyone. He was such a loving devotee, and he took care of the devotees. He was even at the time of after the grand opening, he would still continue to cook. This is Prabhupada's garden. You see Prabhupada's bedroom windows, and you see Prabhupada's veranda, and the little steps going into his garden. Of course, there was no garden there then. Those are the brahmacharis. And just to the right, that is where the guest house was going to be built. The guest house didn't exist. Nothing. Not even the hole had been made yet. If you go around the back of the guest house, you can see that Surabi, he had it designed so there's a basement in the guest house, and that's for storage. This room was not part of Prabhupada's house before. You see, we had to build 2 steps here, because underneath this room was our go-down. And we used to keep all the supplies here for the devotees. So when this room served many purposes. We'll see pictures here. This column, because of course all these columns, these are the concrete ones that hold up the whole guest house. You'll see Prabhupada sitting here. This is a bank. Prabhupada made this into the bank first. That was the entrance. Prabhupada, he said we had to have a bank here. It was prestigious to have a bank and a post office. So we had the post office in the front and the bank here, PNB. And we'll hear about that bank opening. And then after the bank failed, and stole all of our money. Then this was our temple office. And so many things this room was. Then it was our prasadam hall. And then finally it was nothing. So we asked permission in 1984 that could it now be Prabhupada's International Library. They gave us permission. We made this doorway. We made these steps. And then we made this other doorway so that now, because devotees were coming, at that time we had, it was after Prabhupada left, so many devotees were coming Prabhupada's house. Of course, no one entered Prabhupada's house, no public entered Prabhupada's house when he lived here. But afterwards, it was turned into a museum. So many people would come in, so they'd come in one way, and they'd go out the other way. While they were going out, they'd see all of Prabhupada's books that way. So, anyway, this is Prabhupada's garden. These are the devotees, how austerely they lived in those days. This is Chatikara Road. Yes, that's all there was. You see nothing but jungle and some agricultural fields. Sometimes Prabhupada would take walks in the agricultural fields. We'll see other pictures. And the Kishans, they would come, they would offer dandavats to Prabhupada, and they would say, "Oh, we're so honored that you've come onto our land." And Prabhupada, while he was walking on the road, because, in Chatikara, the other villages, they would still come to the mandi every day to sell their subjis. So Prabhupada would barter with them and buy their subjis for the temple. And this is morning walk. And Gurudas, he once said to me, he asked me, he said, "Did you know that all of the most respectable Vrindavanvasis take morning walks on this road? Do you know what that means?" I said, "No, I don't know what that means." He said, "This is the most important road in all of Vrindavan." So Prabhupada, he would take his morning walk every day. And there were no houses, but for some unknown reason, someone had built a house and they had it in cement, Moda Bhavan. Moda Bhavan. So Prabhupada would walk up to the Moda Bhavan and he would say, "Actually, it is Mudha Bhavan." He said, they built their house here in Vrindavan, they live somewhere else, they're working hard, they never get to come here, the house is always empty, so they're working like Mudas, and we get to enjoy Vrindavan. So he would walk up to a special place, there would be a bridge, and we'll see more afterwards. So this is Prabhupada on one of his morning walks in the cold weather. Now, this one, we get to see a little bit of the construction. After Sarabi came, and he changed the design of the temple, and then he, here. There. You see our temple there? They couldn't build the wall yet because the construction was going on. They had to bring all the supplies. So the two gentlemen there, that's Mr. Lahiri and Mr. Guha. They both came from Calcutta. Prabhupada engaged them as our supervisors. They were overseeing the construction, giving the advice. They were engineers. They were in-betweens between Saurabh and Alabuks. So everything had to go through them. And Prabhupada, when he would come home from his morning walk every morning, he would sometimes meet with them. They would discuss this construction. Okay. All right. Now this, excuse me. This is the entrance of Srila Prabhupada's house. You can see right across the road, that's the Dalmia Koti. There was no wall over there. There was no wall over here. Everything was open. Everything was very beautiful. They're building Prabhupada's house here. There was no... This front room where the book stall is, that didn't exist. It was just a veranda at that time. You see the veranda. And this was the first room. That was the secretary's room. The secretary and the GBC used to stay there, and they would guard Srila Prabhupada's main room. So at this early stage of construction, only the secretary's room, Prabhupada's main room, the servant's room, and the prasadam, Prabhupada's prasadam room was there. And Prabhupada lived like that. Because as soon as anything was ready, 1973, Prabhupada moved in. He wanted to stay in his house. The floors were still drying. They had to, put heat so that the floors would be ready on time. Everything was just ready for Prabhupada when he wanted to move in. I think it was March 1973. That was here, the next picture over here. This is Prabhupada when he moved into his room. He's sitting at his desk. That desk now is in Prabhupada's upstairs room. This other desk was built later. It was more ornate. You see here, now Jamuna, they were trying to decorate Prabhupada's room. They bought some cows. They found out later that they were Nandi bulls. They're still here. So Prabhupada is very happy in his new house, and he would. This was the only building on the property. So actually, we lived here when Prabhupada wasn't here. The Matajis lived here. There was nowhere for the Matajis to live. The men lived on the side there. When the deities came, the deities lived here, so we got to live with the deities and prepare their clothes and get everything ready for the grand opening. And then when Prabhupada came, some different adjustments were made. But this was the only place, so this was like the center of the whole project. And we would have our morning programs here. Prabhupada would give class. We would have evening programs here with Prabhupada. And Prabhupada would meet here. He would have his translations here. And during the day, construction will be going on. This is also the early time of the construction. This is 1974 when Prabhupada came. This was the condition of the temple. The floors weren't ready yet. That's why Prabhupada didn't have the grand opening at that time. Now we're up to 1974. Before Prabhupada, let's see, 1973 or so, 1974. Yes, Prabhupada wanted to see, he wanted to, between that time of September 1974 and 1975, when the grand opening was supposed to happen, no, I'm sorry, 1973, between 1973 and 1974, before the Janmashtami, Prabhupada wanted to come and make sure that the construction was going on nicely. It's January. It was the appearance day of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. And Prabhupada at that time, it's 1974, Prabhupada had the first Mayapur Vrindavan festival. So in Mayapur they had built their first building, that was the Lotus building, and you'll see all the devotees there up on the verandas. They were all living in that newly constructed building for the festival of 1 week. And then they came to Vrindavan. Because the temple was under construction, they all stayed at Fogal Ashram. And Prabhupada stayed at his house. And on Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's appearance day, which was before the festival, Prabhupada wanted to check. Prabhupada was giving Bhagavad Gita class here in the morning, And the devotees had come from Fogel Ashram to be with Prabhupada. They walked through the whole construction site, got into his house, they were listening to Prabhupada lecture, he was lecturing very seriously. And then suddenly his face lights up, he starts to smile, he's calling some people from the back of his room here. And it's George Harrison and Ravi Shankar. So George Harrison was very affectionate to Prabhupada. He immediately came forward. Ravi Shankar stayed in the back. And Prabhupada welcomed him. And Prabhupada said to him, he said, "Now you are very famous, but where are you going after you die?" He was very serious with him. He came all the way to Vrindavan to see Prabhupada, and this is what Prabhupada says to him: "Where are you going when you die?" So he was giving Bhagavad Gita class. So George Harrison stayed for a while. Then he wanted to see his friends, Jamuna and Gurudas. He gave Jamuna a big kiss. So then he went on with Ravi Shankar. He left. Then the festival came. Then next, okay. Next we're coming to, all right, festival is finished. Prabhupada's gone on another world tour. He's only hearing from Gurudas. Now when the festival was finished, at that time we had a GBC here, Tamal Krishna Goswami. Actually, Prabhupada was a GBC here. He oversaw everything. But in name it was Tamal Krishna Maharaj. But Tamal Krishna Maharaj, after 4 years in this World Sankirtan Party and his GBC, he was tired, he wanted to go preach, so he gave up his GBC ship and he went to start the Radha Damodar bus program with Vishnu Jan Swami in America, which is very successful. So Prabhupada didn't have a GBC, and he was only hearing from Gurudas what was happening. Gurudas, afraid of displeasing Prabhupada, was just telling him, "Yes, Prabhupada, everything will be ready, everything is fine." Everything wasn't fine, but Gurudas didn't want to displease his spiritual master. So Prabhupada assigned Karandar. Karandar used to be GBC in Los Angeles. Karandar came here in July 1974, just before the grand opening was supposed to be, and Karandar immediately wrote to Prabhupada, "Prabhupada, I don't think you're going to be able to open this temple on Janmashtami." So then Prabhupada became very concerned. So he came here as soon as he could. And when he got here, we heard today how Prabhupada was disappointed. He said, "We can't open this temple. There are no pujaris. Nothing is ready. The doors aren't ready. We just can't open the temple." So then Prabhupada got sick. After that time, one devotee wrote to Prabhupada. His name was Murti Das. Now he had construction experience, so Prabhupada encouraged him. He wrote a very important letter to Murti Das, because Murti Das was a grihasta. He said, "I want everyone living in Vrindavan to live like the Goswamis. Whether they're grihasta or whatever ashram they're in, everyone has to live like Goswamis. No sense gratification here." So he said, you contact Gurudas, you contact Saurabh, and you go, if they agree, then you can go and you can help. So he came here, he made this first blueprint of the future of what the project was going to look like. Nothing had been, guest house didn't exist, Gurukul didn't exist, but this is the plan. You'll see in the front here, see this? This is a well. After Prabhupada made that front wall, he had the devotees dig a well right in front of the temple. And that well had sweet water. And that was the only water we had on the land here. And that water, because in Ramanreti you don't get sweet water. The water over here was salty like the ocean that they dug for the guest house. The water there was sweet. So because the water was sweet, all the locals, they said, "Oh, this temple is definitely blessed." So with that sweet water we were able to do the construction very quickly, because if you do construction with salty water, then the salt stays in it. It's very hard for it to dry. So by Krishna and Balaram's blessings we had this sweet water. Here. Who's this? Yes. And? I'm going to type. Who's in front? Nitai. Yes, that's right. By the mercy of Nitai, you get the mercy of Radha Krishna. That's right. So, Bhardraj was in Jaipur getting the deities carved. When he arrived there, he saw one big chunk of white marble, one big chunk of black marble standing next to each other. And as an artist, he could see right through that marble and see Krishna Balaram standing there. And he watched as they carved. Everything was perfect. All the deities were perfectly carved, because these Mukutwalas, the Murtiwalas, they go according to Shastra. If you ever go and watch them, everything is exactly proportioned, where the eyes, it's not like modern artists. They have everything exactly according to the proportion, according to the Shastra, how Krishna is, how Radharani is, everything. And Prabhupada, he showed Jamuna how he wanted Radharani in dancing form. He posed for her. Now all of the deities they had proportions for, except for one deity. And that was Srila Prabhupada. Because no one had ever made a deity of Srila Prabhupada before. There was no deity of Prabhupada. So Bhardraj was watching the Murtiwala make the deity of Prabhupada, and he wasn't coming out right. Gurudas had taken 360-degree photos of Prabhupada for the Murtiwala, and he was going by that. But Bhardraj rejected the Murti. He said, no, you have to start over again. This is not right. If you go to Pandey Murtiwala, at least we went there 15 years ago for Vrindadevi's deity, that Murti is still sitting there in their showroom, because Bhardraj rejected him. So the Murtiwala, artists, you have to kick them to start, you have to kick them to stop. That's what Prabhupada says about them. So he was temperamental. He had just made the Murti. He didn't want to make another one. It took 1 month for him to make that Murti. So all the Murtis were ready except for Prabhupada. All the Murtis were put into wooden boxes, put onto a Jaipur golden lorry. The name of that lorry was Krishna. And the laborers, all Muslim coolies, they all sat in that lorry. And one night they came from Jaipur. Bhardraj had taken a train back so he could be here in time for when the lorry got here. All the devotees are sleeping here. Suddenly, peacocks were screaming all over Vrindavan. Every peacock. Nobody knew what was happening. Everybody woke up. They jumped out of their beds. They ran to the front. What's going on? They ran to the front of the temple, and there was the lorry with all the deities. So it was 2 o'clock in the morning. They waited till sunrise. Then one by one, the devotees, the workers, they all picked up those wooden boxes, brought them here into Prabhupada's house, into his room here. There was no bed here then. Only Prabhupada's desk was here. So all the deities were brought in. They were all taken out of their boxes. Every time the contractor, he said, be careful, be careful. And when they put the deities down, Jai Shri Krishna, everybody was shouting, even the Muslims. So the deities came. Deities came, they took them out of the boxes. They put them here. Prabhupada's 3 windows are here. They put them with their backs to the windows. because now Bhardraj had to paint the deities. So he was sitting here, and the Brijabasis would come to the windows, they'd bang on the windows, "We want to see Krishna, show us Krishna." But nobody was allowed to see the deities yet until they were installed. In the daytime we would keep sheets over them. So gradually he painted the deities so beautifully. But then he had to go back for Prabhupada. Now, who makes a murti of themselves while they're alive? No, usually after someone dies, then you make a murti. But no, Prabhupada, this was the only murti that Prabhupada made of himself here in our Krishna Balaram temple. And this murti is so special that sometimes while the offerings were going on, because in those days there were 10 plates, I think now there are only 6 plates, right? 7, well, for Samadhi now, yeah. 6 in the temple. In those days, because we had 10 big deities, and Prabhupada didn't like us to use the word deity. He wanted us to use their names. So there were 10 plates. Prabhupada used to get a plate, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati used to get a plate. So Prabhupada would be sitting in his room, and he would send his servant to tell the pujari to bring his plate. And the pujari was, no, the offering's going on. Yeah, Prabhupada wants his plate. So non-different. Prabhupada and this murti that we're worshipping. So special. So this was the murti, Bhardraj. He had to sit there with the murtiwala for 1 month for him to finish. And then Prabhupada came back, Bhardraj came back, he brought the murti. Bhardraj was painting one day, and he was painting Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's lips. And Prabhupada was watching him. And he said, "It's very nice, but it should be a little more pink color, a little more pinkish." And Bhardraj was he was ecstatic. Because for months he had been giving everyone orders. And now Prabhupada was telling him what to do. So during that interim time, that was when they made the beautiful gopis for Prabhupada, which he loved. He was so surprised to see them. And those gopis were used, anytime we had a festival here, we would put them on Radha Shamsundar's altar. They were so beautiful.
Made of what?
This clay and straw.
8 copies?
6 gopis, because there were already 2.
Oh.
Yes.
So where they are now?
They're disintegrated, because they were just made of clay and straw.
You call it 10 forms.
10 deities. Prabhupada. No, Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta, Gaur, Nitai, Krishna, Balaram, Lalita, Shamsundar, Radharani, and Vishaka. Yes, they also had plates. Maybe the cows? No, the cows also, but they didn't get plates. And we only had 2 sets of Utsav Vigrahas. That was Gaur Nitai, Jamuna had them in such a beautiful dancing form, and Radha Shamsundar. There were no Krishna Balaram, because no one had ever made a form like that before. Same, yes, same. And yeah, now only 6 plates. Oh, wait till you see what Prabhupada, how they used to eat. You wouldn't believe it. It's amazing how the devotees used to feed them. You'll see the menu that Prabhupada. So this is Bhardraj painting. This isn't him in Vrindavan. This is because Bhardraj got sick after the 1974 fiasco. Prabhupada sent him to Los Angeles to make the first theistic exhibition. First American theistic exhibition, Fate. It's a big museum they have. And this is Prabhupada and Bhardraj in Los Angeles together. we didn't have any pictures of him here. Oh, this is our kitchen. There's our prasadam hall. They're the devotees. And Anand, not only would he cook, he would do everything himself. Sometimes he would let us help cut the vegetables, whatever. He would have me cut the chilies. So he loved playing tricks on the devotees. So here he would also serve the prasadam to the devotees. He's sitting there. Here he's filling up Guru Das's plate with prasadam. So. Yes. Now, Prabhupada was making plans because Guru Das had told him it's going to be ready. So his plans were that we're going to have a week of festivities, and we should have Ras Leelas and dramas during this week. He wanted the Har Govind Ras Leela players to come and do Gaur Leela and Radha Krishna Leela. And he wanted our Vaikuntha players to come from America. So that did happen, but it didn't happen until 1975. Though Prabhupada was making plans already a year in advance how he wanted the program to be. He also decided in 1974 that he didn't want any outside pujaris, not pujaris. He didn't want any of these Vedacharyas and the Purohits to come to do the installation. He said our own men will do it. So here you'll see how Prabhupada is installing deities. I think this is in, maybe it's in France, or maybe it's in England, I can't. But you'll see one devotee there, Pradumna. So he was Prabhupada's Panditji. So Prabhupada had trained him how to install deities. Prabhupada himself would install the deities. So Prabhupada said, we're going to do everything ourselves. And we're even going to have the devotees dress the deities. He said Jamuna and Tejas's wife, that's Madhira, and Jayatirtha, they can be the head pujaris. So these are our three GBCs, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, then Karandar. So the night when Prabhupada came here in 1974, and Karandar had left, again, there was no GBC. So Prabhupada assigned Jagadish to be the GBC. Jagadish was our Minister of Education, who was going to be in charge of our Gurukuli here. So Prabhupada also wanted him to be our GBC, the temple. Now Jagadish, what did he do? That night, he disappeared. He ran away. He also didn't want to be GBC. So when Prabhupada called for him the next morning to speak to him, his wife Lakshmi Moni said, Prabhupada, we can't find him, we don't know where he went. And Prabhupada said, he is a dead man. Because Prabhupada wanted him to be the GBC. It's a very serious thing. Your spiritual master wants you to do something and you run away. Vaishnav Maharaj was describing the different types of disciples. So he had gone to Delhi to run away, and the devotees informed him what Prabhupada said. He said, you're a dead man. So he came back to Prabhupada and he accepted the responsibility at that time. Here, these are what the gopis look like. Very beautiful. After Prabhupada, you see here, this is when Prabhupada walked in the gate, and he's looking at the temple, and he's asking the devotees, is there any way we can open the temple? Maybe we can open it in sections. Maybe we can just install the deities. And then finally decided, no, it's impossible. We cannot open this temple. Now, just before he had gone to see the temple, because the side gate is here, Prabhupada would always enter from the side gate here to come into his house. So the car would pull up by the side gate, and he walked into his house. When he walked into his house, there in his main room were the 6 gopis. When Prabhupada saw those 6 gopis, tears came to his eyes. He was so happy when he saw them. They were so beautiful. Bhardraj and the artist made them. And then we were all in the kitchen cooking for Prabhupada, which is Prabhupada's bedroom now, the kitchen in those days. So his eyes were all full of tears. He was smiling so happily. He was so excited because he hadn't seen the temple yet. He was so happy to have come now to Vrindavan. Even the gopis were ready. He walked into the kitchen. He saw the devotees there. There were 6 of us there. He went like this with his arm. He said, "You're all personification of the dolls." So we all looked at each other.
Personification of the
Dolls. He was so happy to see those dolls. They were so beautiful, all the gopis. Then he walked to the temple, and he got the shock that the temple wasn't ready. So then he walked back to his house. Complete change of mood. He was angry. He was beyond angry. He was completely disappointed that why hadn't anyone told him. So then Sarab, he spoke up. He said, "Prabhupada, everyone in Vrindavan knows that the temple can't be open. We haven't sent invitations to anyone." And Prabhupada said, "Oh, no one thinks the temple's going to open in a week?" Sarab said, "No, Prabhupada, everyone knows it's not ready." And then Prabhupada was relieved. He said, "All right." And then it was just him and Sarab speaking. All the managers, all the big guns were all there, but it was just him and Sarab. So then he asked Sarab, he said, "So how long do you need before the temple will be ready?" He said, "At least 6 months." "No, we need 7 months. And Sarab, he was very level-headed. He was Dutch. They don't mess around. They're not sentimental. "Prabhupada, we need 7 months." So then Prabhupada calculated. In 8 months was going to be Ram Nomi, 1975. He said, "All right, we will have the grand opening on Ram Nomi, 1975. So that was how it was decided that the temple would be open on Ram Nomi. Here's Prabhupada in his such... This is why he got sick, just at that time. It was too much disappointment for him. He couldn't eat. He had 105 fever. He liked... The only thing that gave him comfort... I would make this chandan for Prabhupada. And the chandan had so many wonderful things in it. So he would have me make that chandan 3 times a day for him. Until one day, he was feeling well enough, he was able to stand. And he walked into the kitchen. And because 3 times a day you make a lot of chandan, you have to work really hard. At the same time cooking was going on. There was so much activity going on in the kitchen. We were getting his lunch ready. We were trying to get him to cook. Not that kitchen. The kitchen was Prabhupada's bedroom at the time. I was furiously making the chandan and Prabhupada was watching me. I didn't know Prabhupada was in the room. So Prabhupada, he told Shrutikirti, he said, "You tell her from now on, you just buy the sandalwood, that powder." Prabhupada was so loving. He said, rather than have someone go through, he said, just have her buy the powder and make that for me every day. So that was helping him. There was a devotee named Pranav. He was making Ayurvedic medicines for him. Everyone, Pishima was cooking magnificent feast for Prabhupada every day. He couldn't even touch anything. He couldn't even eat it. We would bring the feasts in, he would look at it, and then he'd have to run because he would get sick. He couldn't digest. He was so distraught, so disappointed. And that was when the 24-hour kirtan started. That was when Hari Kesh decided only the holy name. Gradually, Prabhupada recovered. Here's one picture of the construction. You see everything going on here. That's Jamuna sitting there. And now, today being Balaram Rasa Yatra, you see, because it was Gurudas who had been writing to Prabhupada that everything would be ready, the devotees blamed everything on Gurudas. Understandably, because he was the one writing the letters. And Jamuna, being the wife of Gurudas, she was ready to kill herself. She was so disappointed. Before Saurabh told Prabhupada that, no, this is the same conversation. Jamuna was in the room when Prabhupada came back from seeing the temple. Prabhupada asked Jamuna, he said, what is your opinion? Can we open the temple? Is there any way? And Prabhupada said, Jamuna said, Prabhupada, I have no qualification to answer this, but we don't have any pujaris. We're going to have all these deities, and there are no devotees. No one lives here. There were no devotees living here, so few devotees. It was just a construction site. So she couldn't see how the temple was going to be open without any devotees here. So then Prabhupada said, all right, we're not going to open the temple. So Jamuna was in such a depressed state. She was ready to finish her life. And at this time, Prabhupada called her. And no, it was August. It wasn't this time. It was August. But he used this example. He said, just as Balaram dragged Jamuna, she didn't want to come see him. She was as disappointed as he was. So when she finally did come to see him, he said, it's just like Balaram dragging the Jamuna. He spoke to her, he preached to her, he made her feel better. He said, now you go rest. You've been under so much strain these last 4 years. He tried to console her because he knew that she was just as disappointed as he was. And everyone was blaming them for the disappointment. So right after that, Jamuna and Gurudas left. They went back to the West. And soon after that, 1976, Gurudas took sannyas, and Jamuna went to start her ashram in America. So, we'll go on. Here, this is Prabhupada coming back from one of his morning walks. He entered from the front gate. There you'll see where the well was. And here is a fountain that Saurabh was making, because we had from the street to the temple, there was all that land. So, and not only that, but the land was, because we're going towards the Jamuna, so the land was tilting downwards. Even now it tilts downwards. That's why when you go to the Samadhi, you have to go up all those steps, because before that, we had very gradual steps going down and a beautiful fountain with the water flowing downwards and then going up again, flowing downwards like that. So this was the fountain that Saurabh had designed. Even when Prabhupada was so sick for the Janmashtami and the Vyasa Puja, he attended the Janmashtami program. Then he collapsed here in his room on his Vyasa on his asan here. Then he attended the Vyasa Puja. He had the devotees wash his feet. and he sent letters to all the devotees, whoever had sent him gifts and donations. It was just amazing how Prabhupada was, he did all of his responsibilities even though he was on the verge of leaving us. And Seth Bishanchand, again, because he had been an ex-MP, he was in coordination with all the politicians here locally. The governor of UP had come to Mathura. His name was Ali Akbar Khan. Of course, he was Muslim. But Seth Bishanchand, he invited Ali Akbar Khan to come and meet Prabhupada and see the temple. So Prabhupada was here in his room. He had 103 temperature. He could barely put his own tilak on. After he put his tilak on, he asked Shruti Kirti, did I put tilak on? Practically delirious. In that condition, the devotees carried him under his arms into the temple. You see Prabhupada sitting there next to the governor. Prabhupada stood up holding the back of his chair. He gave a 20-minute lecture about how this temple is non-sectarian. It's for everyone. The devotees come from every background, and now they've all become Vaishnavas. This is the real United Nations. This is how the whole world can experience peace, by simply worshiping the Lord together. And then the governor, he stood up, he spoke about, because he was the governor of UP. UP was the most populous, the most industrialized state in the whole country at that time. UP was like the heart of India at that time. It wasn't all broken up into UK and all those other places. It had everything. It had all the holy places. It had Ram's birthplace, Krishna's birthplace, Buddha's place. Everything was right here in UP. So he was saying that yes, we must develop this state, and that's why he's come here. He was glorifying Prabhupada and showing his support for what Prabhupada was doing. And then Prabhupada, when he went back to his room, 105-degree temperature. So Prabhupada needed to recover. He wasn't going to be able to travel. He stayed here for 1 month. Then he decided he would go to Mayapur, because September, October in Mayapur, the weather changes. It's very beautiful then. Here, this is, I put this picture here because this is Harikesh, Prabhupada's secretary. So, just so that, I couldn't find any pictures at that time with Prabhupada, because Prabhupada was sick. I couldn't find anyone. And this is our first temple president when the temple opened, Dhananjaya. We all know Dhananjaya. He was here for many years. This is Gunarnava. There's, I think that's Surab, Brahmananda. These are all devotees that we know. So this is when Prabhupada was feeling good, when he would take his walks on the agricultural land alongside of the Chatikara Road. Here's Prabhupada. When he was feeling a little better, he would come to the temple and he would give class, because his Vyasa-san was ready. And we would all come to the classes. Morning time, we would come here for the class. Evening time, Prabhupada would come to the temple. And he would notice who was in the class. One day, Jamuna wasn't in class. He said, "Where's Jamuna?" "Oh, she's going to buy subjis for you." So Prabhupada made a rule. No women can go out at night, and no women can go anywhere alone. That was the rule he made that night. So he was lecturing when he was feeling better. He started to lecture again. And sometimes he would have the other devotees lecture, but mostly Prabhupada was lecturing. And the devotees would also go on Sankirtan here in Vrindavan. This is Guru Das leading a Sankirtan party through Vrindavan town. Now, Prabhupada came to Mayapur. this Prabhupada's room in Mayapur. At the same time, I think nobody stopped me. All right, from tomorrow we start at Mayapur, okay? All glories to Srila Prabhupada.